Hello everybody! Today we're going to be talking about mixed numbers and improper fractions, and the learning goal is I can find equivalent forms of fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals. So we're going to be talking about part of that today and then part of that later. There are two ways that we can write fractions that are for numbers larger than 1. One way is to write that as an improper fraction, which is a fraction that has a numerator that is greater than or equal to its denominator. So the top number is bigger than the bottom number. Or we can write it as a mixed number. The technical definition of mixed number is the sum of a whole number and a fraction. And the way that usually looks is you have a whole number part, which looks like a big number, and then right next to that is a fraction. So let's say you have 2 pans of brownies that you made. And you were really hungry, so you cut those pans of brownies up into thirds and you ate a third of a pan because you were extra hungry. So there's 2 ways I could write a number that would express how much of my brownies are left. I could think of it as having 1 whole pan of brownies left, plus I also have 2/3 of my second pan of brownies left. So that is a mixed number. I've written that as a sum of a whole number and a fraction. It's 1 plus 2/3, and we just say that as 1 and 2/3. Or I could say, well, I've divided this whole thing up into thirds. How many thirds do I have left? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thirds out of the 6 thirds that I had when I had 2 whole pans. Now I have 5 thirds left, and that is an improper fraction. So if I look back up here to my 2 definitions, an improper fraction is a fraction where the top number, the numerator, is bigger than or equal to the denominator, and so that fits right here, 5 thirds. That is an improper fraction. And then a mixed number is just what we talked about, the sum of the whole number and a fraction, and so that would be the 1 and 2/3 here. And where would I put these numbers on my number line down here? Well, they're positive, so they would be to the right of 0. They're larger than 1, but smaller than 2. So if I look at the mixed number, the 1 and 2/3, I can see that I need to go over to 1 and then add 2/3 more. And so if I divided the distance between 1 and 2 into thirds, 3 equal pieces, then I would go over 2 of those and I would make a dot. And so that would be 1 and 2/3. And then if I wanted to graph 5 thirds on my number line, I could have divided up the distance between 0 and 1 into thirds as well, and then you can see you would count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thirds, and I would end up in the same spot. So both of those numbers are equal to the same thing. They're just different ways of expressing this same number. And remember, so we have improper fractions and we have mixed numbers, and they're both ways of expressing fractions that are larger than 1. If I have a mixed number and I want to write that as an improper fraction, there are 2 ways that I can do that. The first way is to remember that this is a sum. So I have 4 wholes plus 2/3, and I could add those together. In order to be able to add those together, I need to be adding together the same size pieces. So I need to figure out how many thirds there are in 4 wholes, and then I can add those 2 together and say, well, how many thirds do I have in all? So remember, each whole, if I'm dividing up into thirds, is divided up into 3 pieces. So each one of these 4 wholes would be divided up into 3 pieces, so that would give me 12 thirds plus 2 more thirds. So that would give me a total of 14 thirds. So that's one way of writing 4 and 2/3 as an improper fraction. The other way, the second method, is probably the one that you're more familiar with. So remember, we have the number 4 and 2/3. So I'm just going to rewrite that here. And And the kind of simple way of doing this is, if I write it like this, I'm going to take 3 and I'm going to multiply that by 4. And that will give me the number of thirds there are in 4 wholes. And then I'm going to add 2 to that. Sorry, that's not very nice. There we go. I'm going to add 2 to that and then keep my denominator. So I'm going to do 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 is 14, and put that all over 3. And that's probably the method that you're more familiar with seeing as far as changing a mixed number to an improper fraction. If I want to change an improper fraction back to a mixed number, here's an example of a problem where I would need to do that. Sorry, there's a typo there. If you're looking on your note guide, you are planning a party and estimate that you need 30 slices of pie for your guests. If each pie contains 8 slices, how many pies should you buy? So I need 30 slices, and each slice is going to be 1/8 of the pie because each pie is divided up into 8 pieces. So I need 30/8. If I want to figure out how many pies I need to buy, then I need to change this fraction 30/8 into a mixed number. And in order to do that, I'm going to ask myself, how many times does 8 divide into 30? So I'm actually going to take 30 and divide that by 8. So 8 goes into 30 3 times because 4 times 8 is 32. So that would be too much. So I'm going to do 3 times 8, which is 24. I'm going to subtract those two. 30 minus 24 is 6. So 8 goes into 30 3 whole times. And now I'm not dealing in decimals, I'm dealing in fractions here. So I'm actually going to keep this remainder and use it as my numerator of my fraction here. So I've taken the remainder and made that the numerator. I've taken my original denominator here, and that remains my denominator. And I've taken this whole number part, and that becomes the whole number over here. So you can see where all the numbers came from. I have 3 whole pies, and then I would have 6/8 left over. Now, if I was going to leave this as a mixed number, I would want to simplify 6/8 because both of those numbers can be divided by 2, so I would divide them both by 2 to simplify. However, I'm not going to go to a bakery and ask them for 6/8 of a pie. Most bakeries wouldn't sell me that much. So I'm actually going to just say, well, I need more than 3 pies, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I need 4 pies here because I'm going to round up so that I make sure I have enough pie for all of my guests. So I'm just going to go ahead and buy 4. Here are your free response and multiple choice questions. You should pause the video now and answer these 2 questions.